What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the Wise Take NFL DFS Wise stream. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. Join once again. We got to go with the true OG. John knows Paulie D. You can find him on Twitter at Paulie with 8 D's. Paulie, NFL action, Wise stream. Just me and you going over week 4 as Patio Joe does his thug dizzle wherever the hell he is. What's going on?
What up, man?
No, man, same old stuff. Interesting little slate we have here. You and I were talking about before the show briefly, and I think you had said that if you did any research all week up until about 3 hours ago, it was basically for nothing. And I think you couldn't have been more right, man.
Yeah. And things are going to change, as we get closer to lock as well. There's still a bunch of questionable guys out there that are going to impact the slate. But I think regardless, like, Alvin Kamara is going to remain as chalky as can be. I think the same kind of goes for Hopkins because now you're going to have a ton of value. So a couple of those high-end studs, you just, are going to be higher owned than, were projected earlier. And, it's kind of easy to kind of pick those guys out. One or two of those high-end quarterbacks, Kamara, Hopkins, just so easy to get, unusual or unlike most weeks.
Yeah, and I think with that said, we could see a lot of the mid-tier plays go lower owned, not even just because of the injury and the value, but because there were so many of them anyway. It was already going to be kind of a crapshoot, and now that you have high and lows getting mixed in, it's going to make it even more of a crapshoot. So, interestingly enough, like you said, like the builds, like the optimal builds or whatever that you may have been coming through in the beginning of the week, probably aren't the same now. With all the news that we have, and we had a lot of news. I mean, the Saints are like completely banged up, right? No Jared Cook. We know Michael Thomas isn't playing. The defense is banged up. No Marshawn Lattimore and Janoris Jenkins. So we're talking about third string, and I think their third string quarterback is also questionable. So we're dealing with there's a depleted secondary there. There's a ton of them everywhere, and like we have that list. But, like, that's only for the fucking skill players. It's not even including the linemen that are out and all the, there's just a lot, man. There's just a lot. With that said, we also have summer players returning. Guys like DJ Chark is expected to come back. Situations like that can also murkify others. So for this week, it just seems like paying attention to the news is the biggest thing you could do. Is just pay fucking attention to see who's actually playing and who's not.
Like an NBA.
It is, man. It is. Got the NBA feel. And, like, the injuries have been ridiculous, man. Just, like, unbelievable. And you could blame turfs all you want. And I'm sure the MetLife turf has something to do with it. I don't doubt that. But I mean, come on, man. No preseason, no real training camp. Like, this is what you're getting. You got guys that are out of shape. Now, not out of shape cardio-wise. Out of shape, like, their body's not ready for that type of work, man.
Yep.
Craziness. So let's look at this list that we got here. So Michael Thomas... these are all players who are out. Michael Thomas, Chris Godwin, Cam Akers, Jared Cook, obviously Jimmy G and Mostert, Deshaun Jackson. Both the receivers are expected to be out for the Raiders. Edwards and Ruggs is not officially out, but he's doubtful. We're expecting to be out. Steven Sims, Pittman from the Colts. What's his name from the Chargers? The Williams. Mike Williams. Mike Jones. Mike Williams. And then we look at the questionable lists: D-Hop, Christian Kirk, McLaurin, who was another one we were talking about before the show, a last-minute pop-up at practice injury, waiting on the status of Moss. Chris Carson, who we thought was like done to start the week, is now questionable. And Pete Carroll, he could be full of shit, but he said that he got through a full week of practice and he looked good and he's optimistic he's going to play. With that said, his backup Hyde is also questionable, and Kareem Hunt is also questionable. So we've got a lot going on. And a lot of this stuff just came out today. It's Friday, right? So we find out that, like, the last practice of the week, you get a pretty, somewhat of a clear picture. It's just wild, man. Wild all day.
That's right.
With that said, we'll get right into it, man. We'll go position by position as we do. I know Patio Joe likes to pick a game, but Patio Joe ain't fucking here. No, I'm just kidding. We'll pick a game that we'll pick a game in honor of Joey, and I know he I kind of crashed the party with these shows. It's supposed to be you two, so we'll keep it in honor of Joey. Try to keep it the same format. And I know there was a game that we each picked, so we'll do thy dirty to thy neighbor. That's one for those of you counting. Shout out to Chadwick in the YouTube chat. Over and under for do dirties tonight. 47.5 juiced on the over. Hit up Chadwick in the chat. If you want to get down on that. he's the line maker for today. And shout out to all of you joining us live. Joey's not here. We didn't have to wait until 11:30 to do it because we're both on the East Coast and we live normal lives. So.
I love Joey, but this is so nice.
You mean not being half asleep is you don't like doing shows when you're half asleep? You don't like that? Shout out to Joey though. We love you, bro. All right.
Yeah.
We'll get into quarterbacks. I got the projections pulled up on the screen for those of you following along. These projections are available at ysec.com for download. We'll be editing them all the way up until Sunday, especially with the news we're waiting for. So keep an eye out on that. With that said, Joe, fuck, now I got to talk about Joe so much. I'm calling you Joe, bro. My bad. The D. Matter of fact, 8 Ds. The 8 Ds. Paulie, we'll break this up into tiers to make it a little less painful. So we'll stop it at, like, say, Kyler Murray at 7K. And we'll break the quarterbacks into tiers. So the spend up quarterbacks.
All right. Like I said, we're gonna have a lot of value. So, getting the higher end quarterbacks shouldn't be all that hard. I expect Lamar Jackson to have a big bounce back week. Washington looks like they're gonna really struggle to move the ball, score points, and with all their injuries coupled with the quality of Baltimore's defense, wouldn't be shocked to see Lamar just put up a real crooked number. Also, Washington, the one thing they do well is rush the passer, which will create more rushing opportunity for Lamar as he tries to escape that and. Plays break down when you're blitzing, you're in man, so the D-backs will have their back to the quarterback, and I wouldn't be shocked if he breaks 100 rushing with a couple scores and posts a real high score. So I'm cool with him. Russ, I'm really not that into unless both Hyde and Carson get ruled out. I'm really more into the running backs if you do have them that's healthy. I just think you can do whatever you want against Miami. Like, I think Russell will get his, but I don't see it being like a ceiling situation. Same kind of goes for Mahomes, but that kid's so good. I would say I'd get a little bit of him. Josh Allen, I think, just continues to do the dirt. Him and Lamar would probably be my two favorites. I don't mind Dak. I don't mind Murray either, but similar to Russ, like for Kyler Murray, I just expect the run game to do some work as well. But they're all fine. And like, I plan, initially I was like looking for the value of quarterback so I can get up to some of the studs. And now it's kind of easy to get these guys. And I'll probably, my ownership is probably going to shift to, some more mid-tier value kind of quarterbacks. The Lamar Jacksons, Mahomes, and Josh Allen's is of this group above 7K.
Yeah, I think Lamar Jackson's probably my favorite from a tournament perspective. I'm hoping that people are kind of, backing off, especially because Wilson's been so good. Mahomes has been great. Josh Allen's been awesome. Dak's been awesome. So I'm hoping that people are a little reluctant, especially after seeing him look so human against Kansas City. But this is the kind of game script that his team is built for. Positive game scripts where they're playing from ahead. Washington's defensive line we saw against the Eagles looked really good. Well, they haven't looked so good since they lost their defensive tackle and their edge rusher Young. Washington's defense has allowed 64 combined points to the Browns and Cardinals over the last 2 weeks. They're just getting slaughtered. I'm worried about the one-sided aspect, especially with how banged up the offense is for Washington. But we've seen the Ravens in the past, not that they've done it every time, but we've seen them in the past really put their foot on the gas and really put their foot on the throat and just rack up points. I think it was last year, week 1, when they played Miami and they just completely dismantled them and Lamar broke the slate that day with Hollywood Brown. There's potential for it. And I think that, being that he did look so bad and so human in that last game, being that his whole team didn't look great and they got destroyed by Kansas City, maybe we see them come out and swing. So I'm interested for that reason. Russell Wilson with Carson back, that does lower a little bit. I guess it shouldn't, but it kind of does, only because I have a new piece that I may be able to play. It's not so much that because he could throw to Carson. That's absolutely on the table. But I think it's just one more weapon that he has. So like maybe I can get exposure to him through his skill players instead. I'm with you on Pat Mahomes too. The Patriots are 27th in DVOA against the pass. And I guess you could argue that he's too cheap for the upside. Like, it's crazy that he's only the third most expensive. He's the best quarterback in the league, and he's the third most expensive. New England's defense hasn't looked good. I have the same reluctancy as you, though, right? I don't know. I think it's because I like Cam. We'll talk about that. But I kind of like the quarterback on the other side for cheaper, and I think that's the reason I'm not so big on Mahomes. Josh Allen, I think, is pretty sneaky. So one interesting thing about Josh Allen versus the Raiders stack the box like the least in the league. Like 3% or something. They don't like to stack the box, which is why they're so bad against the run. It's interesting when you consider Josh Allen. At the time when I was compiling these stuff, it looked like John Brown was going to be out. So I'm thinking like, he's going to have to run more. However, John Brown looks like he's going to play. That's another surprise of the list of guys that we thought were going to miss and are now going to play. So Allen, I always mention Paulie because you always have an eye on this guy, and there's something about the Bills that's just not sexy. There's just something about it. Their ownership's never high. Allen's gone for over 30 DraftKings points in all 3 of his games, and his ownership just is nothing. And I understand this a lot of times because he's priced around these kind of guys. But I don't know. It just seems so anti-sexy. But that makes you want to make sure you have. The Raiders' defense is terrible, and not for nothing. But the Bills' offense the Bills' defense hasn't looked so great either. Yielding a bunch of points. They did well against the Jets. Who gives a fuck? Everybody does well against the Jets. I'm not that interested in Dak. I just think that game has I don't know. I think it's got a slower vibe to it. I think both teams are going to try to run the ball. I will say this: looking at the Cleveland secondary with checking on the status of Ward and I forget the other guy's name, but that could make a difference because that does make a difference for Cleveland. Cleveland is 10th in DVOA against the run and the pass. So they're actually a decent defense so far this year, DVOA-wise. I know it's kind of early to rely on those metrics, but something to consider. I'm kicking the idea around. Kyler's the one I'm circling, right? He's the one that I'm kind of stuck on, and that's because, number one, he's the cheapest of these guys, and he has that rushing upside, that rushing floor. Not to mention, the Panthers play zone coverage, the second most in the NFL, at an 83% clip, and On the flip side, you don't expect Murray to run against zone, right? Teams that play zone means they're facing the quarterback. They're going to keep an eye on Murray. When teams play man, they got their back to the quarterback. Secondary's not looking. He could take off. So while I don't expect him to run, it does seem like over his young career, he's actually thrown way more efficiently against zones. And that sets up really well for Hopkins, who's been doing a whole ton. Hopkins is not smashing the air yards. He's just getting a ton of targets, and it's a lot of hitch plays. It's a lot of let me go stand, find the zone, stand where nobody's at, and wait for him to throw me the ball. So that's why I'm torn.
His like splits from DraftKings to FanDuel are dramatic. Yeah. You know, like been an MVP great play on DraftKings. He's just been a mediocre one.
Right. No, that's a really good point. And that's why I'm torn, because I feel like we're probably not going to have the rushing upside of this play. If this team is playing zone, he shouldn't be able to run that much. But he's been more efficient passing, and that does push me towards just playing skill players. We'll talk about Drake. We'll talk about D-Hop, like who you mentioned, and like I feel like we can just get exposure to him through those guys and be just fine. If he's not going to run, right? If he's not running, then we could beat it.
I find it hard to see him having the highest scoring play of the quarterbacks this week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not that he's projected to be that popular, but I think Kyler's always going to be popular right now.
Yeah, people just like the guy. I do.
I completely agree with you said that. You know,
I'm with it. All right, let's get into this mid tier. Take me from Goff down to, we'll stop it at 6-1 at Brady. Any interest in this mid range here?
Oh, absolutely. Deshaun Watson projecting at some places as the chalk, and top 5 no matter where you look. He's had 3 extremely tough opponents, and now finally walks into like the nut matchup for passing quarterbacks. Depressed price, rushing upside. Team desperately needs a win. Minnesota's been god awful defensively. He's really their whole team at this point. Like David Johnson's all right, Will Fuller's all right, but it's either gonna be done with his feet or his arm. And Minnesota's giving up points and yardage just on the reg. And I really like him. He was probably my favorite before all the value opened up. He's home on the turf. At that price point, it was mega attractive. He's probably decreased a little because now I feel like why not just go get Lamar and have the higher ceiling? And I'm not convinced Minnesota hangs in this game and all that kind of good stuff, but definitely like Deshaun. Love Cam Newton. I was heavy on him last week against the Raiders, and it backfired. They just didn't need to do that much. They were able to run on them. The Raiders made mistakes, gave New England good field position, and they led the whole way. And in those kind of environments, Cam's just not going to need to do that much. This is the exact opposite. This is similar to that Seattle situation where he should be trailing. Almost, I don't see how he's not. And he's playing a mediocre defense that gives up points and yardage, and they're not so one-dimensional like Baltimore, where like when they fall behind, they just collapse. Like they can, he can throw the ball, and he's just gonna accumulate points, trying to chase down Mahomes the whole game, and hopefully, they are able to keep it close like the Seattle game, and he ceilings out. But he, like you said with Kyler, we don't expect the rushing upside. With Cam, I do, so he's probably my favorite player at the position point per dollar. And, after last week, I didn't even know they were playing the Chiefs this week, but I was like, oh, I see, I get it. He had a decent game against Miami, but that was opening weekend, and the Dolphins just got awful, and most of it came off of 2 rushing touchdowns. But, this team just does not have that much weapons, and when they're going to score a lot of points and, play from a trailing position, he's going to be involved in all of it for the most part. So I do really like Cam, and I really like Joe Burrow. The total is soaring in the Cincinnati-Jacksonville game. We saw Miami-Jacksonville play, and although it wasn't pretty, they did put up points. And I think Cincinnati is the best of those three teams offensively with true weapons. This kid Joe Burrow is legit. He's, I think going to emerge as like one of the best quarterbacks, after a year or two, and this is a spot where he should be able to shine against just an awful defense. And Jacksonville should be able to score against Cincinnati and keep the scoring going. Push Joe Burrow to continue to produce. This game has risen like I think almost 5 points a total or something like that, 4 points. It's up around 50. You wouldn't expect that from a Bengals Jacksonville game, but that just tells you how bad these defenses are, and they do actually have some decent players on both sides offensively. So I really like Joe Burrow. We've seen some of the rushing upside that he has as well. It's not the same as Cam or Kyler, but he can run for a touchdown. He can run for some yards, and he's one of my favorites out there as well. I like them more before the value once again, but still going to get a bunch of exposure to him. That's probably it. I mean, you can make some cases for Goff and Brady, but those three guys in that mid-tier, were my favorites. Probably not as much anymore because of the value, but still some of the better plays in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm trying, I do like the guys up top. Like, if you can get to Jackson or Wilson or one of those guys, and obviously you're going to feel more comfortable with that, but in tournaments, I agree with you. I think a lot of the other guys in the mid-tier, outside of maybe Deshaun Watson, who's everybody's favorite sneaky play this week, it feels like everybody's like, I'm on Deshaun Watson. Like, oh yeah, everybody's on Deshaun Watson because he's 6'6" and he's playing Minnesota, who's been terrible. And I like Watson. I'm not saying I don't. What's not to like? I do think that there's a leverage opportunity with David Johnson. Sure, some people will play him with Watson. But one drawback, I guess, is Minnesota's defense. I know they haven't looked good at all, but they're actually 13th against the pass and 23rd against the run. Now, again, it's a little early to rely on DVOA metrics, but we usually count them in like week 5. So we're literally, just a little almost there. So it's good enough for me, just for the sake of ownership, right? Like, I'll have some exposure to him. I like Fuller. I like all those guys, but it does kind of make me, in the back of my mind, I got David Johnson back there as potential leverage. If Watson doesn't do it through his feet or his arm, then maybe it was because they ran the ball with DJ. Cam Newton's my favorite in the mid-tier also. When you compare everything all together, ownership, the spot, everything, perception, Cam Newton, I'm sure most people are going to look at like Lamar Jackson's better than Cam Newton, and look what happened to Lamar Jackson. Well, Cam Newton's a little more experienced. Cam Newton's a bigger motherfucker, to put it bluntly, and he's also got smarter, more experienced people around him, right? Julian Edelman's been in the game a long time. We're relying on Brown, who this is no knock to Hollywood Brown. I think he's extremely talented, but he's young. I don't think he's making too many improvised decisions on his own. I don't think he has that trust. Whereas a guy like Edelman maybe does. Not for nothing, but also, Bill Belichick is letting Cam run. Like, you talk about let Russ cook in Seattle. They're letting Cam run here, man. Like, the rushing attempts for Cam is 15, 11, and 9. Rushing attempts. A lot of quarterbacks, they get these rushing attempts because they were forced to run. Well, New England is just running. They're just snapping it to Cam, and from the gate, that's the game plan. You run. So on DraftKings, that's extremely valuable for us, just as it gives us a nice floor. And obviously, once he starts being effectively running on Kansas City, who, by the way, I believe is 30th against the run. I have it written down here somewhere. 30th against the run, DVOA. That's going to open up some of the pass game work. They're going to bring guys up trying to contain Cam, and that's when he's going to be able to dump it over the top, over the middle to guys like Julian Edelman, maybe even N'Keal Harry, who we'll talk about the wide receiver position. So I'm with you. I do like the mid-tier, and there's even a couple guys in value land that I like. But of the mid-tier, Cam's actually my favorite, slightly over Deshaun Watson, who's next. And then a close third is Joe Burrow. I agree, Paulie. This is the best matchup Joe Burrow is going to have seen. On top of that, Jacksonville's kind of been a pass funnel so far, right? 9th against the run DVOA, 32nd against the pass. Joe Burrow leads his conference in pass attempts. He's also 5th in the league in carries. Meanwhile, Jacksonville gave up 363 passing yards to Phillip Rivers, and they've allowed an 80. Phillip Rivers. They've allowed. I don't think he hasn't done anything close to that since. Granted, blowouts are involved in that, but they're also allowing an 80% completion rate, which is just extremely high. I think a rookie like this can take advantage of. He's got really good skill players, at least in Tyler Boyd. We saw that other kid, make a huge impact last week, and not for nothing, but they have like a little guy named AJ Green who may actually get his softest matchup yet. So I'm with it, man. I do like Burrow, and I think my ownership is going to be more so in the mid-tier value than it is going to be up top. Number one, to get a little bit different, and number two, I genuinely like the spots for these guys better. You know, the guys up top, I'm just not as crazy about the situations they're in, considering the price I'm paying. I'm looking for pure shootouts, and I have some concerns on game scripts and all that stuff with the guys up top. Let's go down to Value Town. We've got Matthew Stafford at 5,900. We'll take it from him down. Any paid on quarterbacks you like, Paulie?
So, again, I was really into this tier. Now it's all like shifted. It's like, oh, the guys up top that I really wasn't interested, I can get. Love that. The mid-tier guys that I was most interested in, have shifted down. The value guys that I was interested in have really come down. But I will say that Stafford, I've got a little bit of interest in. New Orleans was really not doing that well against the pass anyway. And then they lose Lattimore, the D lineman, and they're good against the run, bad against the pass. I can't see Detroit having any success running. Detroit's terrible defensively. And I expect New Orleans, even as banged up as they are, to be able to score the ball. And, on the turf, Detroit, Stafford was looking great last year. He hasn't this year. They've, ran the ball more than I would have expected, even trailing. And, but this could be a spot where Stafford finally, goes off. It's like a 5% play, but I will mention him. Justin Herbert, I've got interest in at 5'8". With Mike Williams going out, I think it's really kind of simple who to pair him with. I think Tampa Bay is, a very good defense, but I still think they're suspect against the pass. And, at his price, coupled with, some solid stacking partners, he could impress, could kind of post a big score, like a 30 out of him at 5'8" is, the same thing as Lamar posting a 40, which I think is in the realm of outcomes this weekend. Again, it's just a 5% play because we've got the value. If we didn't, I'd be talking about it a lot more. And then Fitzpatrick, I loved, Seattle's been bad against the pass. He should be trailing. Their offense has actually looked decent. You know what I mean? And, we know that he can, Jameis Winston, throw a couple pick sixes and then, spend the rest of the game chasing them down, throwing it 40 or 50 times. And he does have some skilled receivers. So I like the idea of using him as well. But again, that is just faded because the amount of times that he does go for 30 plus, just aren't that often. And you've got the guys at the top that you can get, like Cam and Lamar, that are just, that's more of like their median and they have much higher ceilings. So those are the three that I'll sprinkle in a little bit, but the majority of my ownership is going to be from Joe Burrow up.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm taking a little bit of a different approach. I like the same players. I'm just going heavier, I think, on, like you said, Joe Burrow and above. I'm pretty much like Deshaun Watson and below for the most part. Not saying I won't have exposure to the guys up top, but I really like Stafford a ton this week. I know I'm kind of chasing that, but he's at home, which is nice. He's got Kenny Golladay back. In limited capacity, we saw him perform much better with Golladay back. Now I'm assuming they're ready to let Golladay go a little bit. Golladay was a little limited on the snap count. He still managed to get enough targets to get the job done, get in the end zone. The Saints were already a pretty big pass funnel, like you mentioned. Sixth against the run in DVOA, 21st against the pass. On top of that, the Saints are 25th in QB hit rate at 12%, which I think adds to them their lack of pass rush, their lack of ability to get to the quarterback, allowing quarterbacks to be able to do dirties to them. I think that's two if you're counting. And then on top of that, no Marshawn Lattimore, no Janoris Jenkins, and there's a third cornerback who's questionable. Things just opened up. It went from being like a funnel situation to Hawkinson to now Galladay's matchup just got a whole lot damn better. Marvin Jones's matchup just got a whole lot damn better. And on top of that, their defense, Detroit's defense, is atrocious and probably won't be able to stop the Chalk Kamara. So you can really see this game kind of getting there. So I'm interested. I think that the price for Stafford, if and I don't even necessarily need the 30. You only need the 30 from him if Jackson, Wilson, if one of those guys up top go for 40. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I do like the idea of Stafford. I like that game in general. I think that's a way to get different, still play Kamara and get a little bit different is by bringing it back with more Detroit players. And then the other guy, like you said, Ryan Fitzpatrick, man, Fitzmagic. That game's got boom or bust, right? Either Miami's going to show up because Seattle's defense is terrible, and Seattle's defense is also banged out. No Jamal Adams, banged up. No Jamal Adams. Who else are they missing? So they're missing Jamal Adams, Quentin Dunbar, and then linebacker Jordan Brooks. Shaquille Griffin is also currently questionable. So Seattle's defense was already struggling, and now they're kind of in shambles. Seattle was
in the traffic across the country into Miami. It's going to be humid.
Miami had extra rest on top of that. They played on Thursday night, so they're working with like 10 days now. So the spot lines up pretty good. Now there is always that risk with Fitzpatrick of like he comes out and throws 4 picks out the gate because he's just having a bad day, and then they bring in Tua. Like I feel like it's always him in the situation, you know.
Tua is questionable.
That helps. If he's any kind of injured, they're not going to debut him if he's any kind of injured. So that certainly helps. I'm glad you mentioned that. But Seattle 4th against the run, even though I don't think that's going to hold up without Adams, and 29th against the pass, which should be a lot worse. So I'm with you, Paulie. I mean, these are the guys, and I'm kind of glad the value is opening up elsewhere because I think it's going to pull the ownership off of these guys. Not that they were going to be popular anyway, but the people that were thinking about it aren't going to think about it no more. So that's kind of leave things open, allow us to get some of the, maybe if I go chalkier studs, I don't have to worry because I know my other fucking pieces are all owned. I don't know why I had to curse. I guess I'm just passionate about it. But it's just what it is. We'll go over to running backs if you're good. You good?
Yeah, I'm
let's
good.
Go to running backs. I'll let you boy. We'll break this into tiers as well. We'll take it down to, since there's more running backs, I guess we'll take it down to like Josh Jacobs at 6'8".
Okay. Yeah, a lot. I mean, let's just get Kamara out the way.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't decided how I'm going to approach him yet, but I think the only 2 options are with the field or above the field. Like, they've got nothing, literally nothing against one of the worst defenses. He could have 30 touches, half of them being targets. Like, his floor is got to be like a 20. You know what I mean? And we've got like a 54 total or something here. What is the total at now? 54. Like, I think he continues to be a part of the touchdowns, right? Which is nice. On top of all the catches, on top of all the rushing yards, phenomenal play. On FanDuel, maybe you could find some reasons for fade, being underweight, whatever. DraftKings with like the 10 catch floor, I just don't see how you fade this guy. The only way it busts, I think, is if he gets hurt. And like I said, I think you're either at the field or above. I think it's the only 2 ways to approach it. And again, we've got the value, so it's not even like it's going to hinder your lineups all that much. You'll be able to pair him with a bunch of other attractive plays. So I'm just going to load up on him. Maybe even lock button. What do you think about that?
I don't disagree. I don't really have any arguments. I agree with you in that the only way this doesn't, like, that he busts, so to speak. And what do we consider a bust? Like, if he puts up, less than what?
20 or less?
Yeah, I would say that, right? Because if he's giving you 20 or more, he's not killing you. He's not the reason you lost, right? So I think there's 2 paths here to him not being in the winning lineup. Number 1 is, like you said, he gets hurt. Number 2 is that some other cheaper running back matches his score. And so you just didn't need necessarily him. But other than that, I don't see a world where he doesn't give you that floor that we're looking for. So, yeah, I agree with you. At the field or higher, I agree.
Yeah. The rest of the way, right, like, Zeke, I think, is like an interesting contrarian play. Like, he's going to be low owned. Pairing him with Kamara is a lot of salary. I don't think that's going to be kind of popular. And he does have a 40-point ceiling. It's just that, like, Cleveland is pretty decent defensively. I agree with what you said earlier that both these teams want to run, so I expect the pace to kind of be slower. the only it's just a high ceiling contrarian kind of play. Like he'll probably be like under 10%, which that's always kind of attractive. Still a big total here. But Dalvin Cook for $200 less, I like a whole lot more against Houston. Minnesota just doesn't have many weapons, and they're utilizing him in the pass and getting the carries. He's got all the red and green zone love, and Houston's bottom, 20 against the run and the pass. We've seen Connor tear them up. We saw James Edwards-Helaire or Clyde Edwards-Helaire tear them up. So really, really like Dalvin Cook on the high end. His ownership's looking pretty low as well. So, like that. I do like Austin Eckler. Tampa Bay is just good defensively now. They're not even, great against the run, terrible against the pass. They're just good against everything. But I don't think that they're just going to, shut out the Chargers. And with Mike Williams out, there's really, I guess 3.5 mouths to feed. He'd be really contrarian. I don't think I get there, but, I think this quarterback, we've seen that, he is willing to throw to Eckler, and there is a world where he has a similar kind of day to Kamara, especially if he gets the touchdowns. So he's all right. I probably won't get much, but he's in play as well. I really like Cook Kamara a lot better. If Hunt gets ruled out, then Chubb would become more interesting to me. I don't think Dallas is very good defensively at all. But I do kind of expect Dallas to lead. And, I think that makes Cleveland escape, abandon the run quite a bit. If Hunt's there, then he's not going to get that pass game work. At this point, I'm not interested unless Hunt gets ruled out. Josh Jacobs, I am interested in. All those injuries for the same reason I liked him against New England. And I think that you can run a little bit on Buffalo, right? Especially in between the tackles. I think they're bottom 5 defensively against the run. They want to run. They're at home. I think this game will be close. And, at the 6-8 spot, it's more towards that balanced build. It'll probably be more in game stacks with Josh Allen, run it back with Jacobs. But I do like Jacobs. And with everybody down, I could see his pass game involvement increase as well if they're trailing. But he just has, he's been great since coming into the league, and he's got a nose for the end zone, and another game with a huge total there. I do have interest in Jacobs, but he's way behind Kamara and Cook.
Yeah, I think that's my only issue with with doing a lock button on a guy like Kamara is there's just too many good running backs. There's a lot of and listen, I don't think there's any that have the probability of hitting their ceiling like he does. So he is my favorite by a pretty good margin. But I still want to have room for others. But I agree with you. I'm at the field or over on Kamara. That's it. You're not going underweight on him. Ezekiel Elliott. I agree with you that I think because Kamara's ownership is going to be high, I think that's going to naturally lower some of Zeke, especially because some of the value that we have opened up may be at running back for some people, depending on the builds they want. I'm okay with Zeke. I'm with you though. I prefer Dalvin Cook for $200 cheaper against Houston, whose rushing defense has kind of been a joke. Zeke's volume looks fine. Everything looks good. It's just the Browns are decent defense, and not for nothing. But if the Browns secondary's banged up coming into this week, that's the path of less resistance for the Cowboys is going to be to throw. So even though I wasn't,
I'm seeing Zeke's projected ownership second highest of running backs.
It could be because of the value that's opened up. That could be an adjustment.
I'm really surprised to see Cook so far lower than him. This is the first time I really looked at it. I just assumed Cook would be significant, the third or fourth highest owned running back, and he's way down.
Well, I think the reason, and you're right. I think the reason that Cook is falling so low is because people are just looking at the game logs and the touches. And Zeke has had, I have it right here, so 22, 22, and 14 carries in the first 3 games. and 4, 7, and 11 targets, while Dalvin Cook has had 12, 14, 22, and 2, 2, and 5. So I think people are concerned about the volume. What they're not taking into account is Minnesota was blown out for 2 of those games. So we saw against the Titans what they'll do with Cook. That was just 22. We saw what happens with Cook when the Vikings are in a close game. It's the same thing as Zeke. But I think that people aren't realizing that, okay, well, they got their ass kicked the first 2 weeks, and so that's why they didn't really use Cook that much. But yeah, I think that's going to be true. I think people are going to have the money. They're looking at Zeke like, well, he's getting used every single time. Dalvin Cook's not really getting used.
That's what it is. The 12 targets
last
week.
100%. And on top of that, Dallas has come forward and said that they want to get Zeke more involved. They want to run the ball more. Like they've been saying all that shit. Kellen Moore is a fucking quarterback from Boise State, man. He's all about airing that bitch out. But anyway, I agree with you. I'm cool with Zeke, but he's probably my least favorite of these studs. Of Kamara, Cook, Elliott, he's my least favorite. I like Cook for the contrarianism. The game in general looks good. Cook is the one running back that I'll play with another running back in the game. I don't care. If it's Cook, I'll still play both running. I don't like to play the running back from the same game. Cook, I don't care because he's such a big part of their plan. If the game is close enough, he's involved. We saw last year, Cook and Henry both smashed because both teams are reliant on their running backs. That's what happened. It's interesting. Nick Chubb, I agree with you. I want Hunt out. I have too many running backs in my pool. So if Hunt is in, it's just an excuse for me to hop off Chubb. I still like Chubb. It's all fine and dandy, but Dallas has also been worse against the pass. Josh Jacobs is the real interesting play. Again, not easy to pull the trigger necessarily on him when you're talking about, we just talked about Cook and Kamara and all these guys. But to your point, Buffalo is 15th against the pass DVOA, 26th against the run. We know Henry Ruggs is doubtful. Bryan Edwards is out. The Dolphins and the Rams both averaged collectively 4.85 yards per carry. Josh Jacobs, 25, 27, 16 carries his last 3 games. 6'3", 4 targets last 3 games. That's pretty good usage, and the spot isn't as bad as I think perceptually. People think of the Bills, they think really good defense, but that really hasn't been the case this year. They've been pretty good against the pass. They got a really good cornerback. They've been getting fucked up on a run, man, on the ground. They have. That and slot receivers have kind of just been tearing them up. So he's interesting. You know his ownership is going to be low. Eckler, I kind of skipped over Eckler. You made a really good point about him. We saw that this quarterback seems more willing to check down when necessary. Tampa Bay's defense is good against the run. However, they've allowed the 3rd most catches to running backs and the 4th most receiving yards to running backs. We look at Eckler's rushing attempts, 19, 16, 12. Targets, 1, 4, and then 11 in his first game with Herbert fully playing and starting. And, well, I guess week 2 he did, but that was unexpected. But last week they threw to him 11 times. So I'm with you, Paulie. I think we could see. I think like what he really should be in all honesty is Kamara Light. That's what he should be. A guy going to get 10 to 15 carries and probably anywhere from 8 to 15 to fucking 13 targets. That's what he should be. We don't know for sure if that's what they're going to use him as, but the matchup kind of sets up that way, right? You mentioned Tampa Bay's defense is really good against the run and the pass. Keenan Allen's going to have his hands full with Todd Bowles. They're going to be blitzing. They're going to, all that shit. So check down seems like the right approach, especially if Tampa Bay's willing to give it to you. That's the one thing they're giving teams is they'll let you throw to your running back. So I agree with you. And again, that goes back to the reason with Kamara. That's the only reason I'm not lock button in him. Is there's just so many running backs that I want to make sure I have a shot at. What about the guys under Jacobs? We'll take it down to around, I guess we'll take it down to 6K or so.
All right. I really like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I just do not think New England is good. I think that they're going to have their hands full with all the studs on the Chiefs offense. Edwards-Helaire is getting by far the most touches of any of those studs on the Chiefs offense. And they should play from ahead and just, beat in the rock. He'll get some pass game work, but 15 to 20 touches, the team's going to score a ton of points. The Patriots are just bad. They're not good. And they're only good offensively. So this should be a high-scoring back-and-forth shootout. Hard to see Edwards-Helaire not being involved in both the run and the pass game. And at 6'4", he does have a big point per dollar ceiling if he does, if the touchdown variance kind of comes his way. I if Carson was healthy, I would be like, head over heels in love. You can absolutely murder the Dolphins on the ground. The injury thing, even if he is active, like, it concerns me. You know what I mean? And um, like you said, the pool's big already. I think I hope he just gets ruled out. We don't have to worry about it. But it's a great spot for whichever running back it is. If he's out, then Hyde will become one of the best value plays on the slate. So we got to kind of wait and see on that. Kenyon Drake, Carolina is terrible against the run. What are they actually DVOA? Yeah, 20. 20. Yeah, terrible. This, Kenyon Drake had a handful of massive ceiling games last year. He has not shown that this year. But he is getting that 15 plus carries. The pass game work has disappeared. It's kind of like you're going to need the touchdown variance come his way. But, if I'm spending up at other positions and I need to go mid-tier running back, he's absolutely fine. And this, if he is going to have any smash games, this should be one of them. And that's it, down to 6. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't mind James Robinson either. I kind of just glazed over him. I have zero interest in Jonathan Taylor. But, again, the pool's just so good and his price is up. And, I don't think, he gets those same 2 touchdowns like he did against Miami on, 17 touches. I think his price is a little too high because of those touchdowns. And I just like the other players more. So it's Edwards-Helaire. That's it. He's the only guy really. And Kenyon Drake a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll start with Jonathan Taylor, just going by price. So he's not a guy that I'm over head heels with this week. It's more probably a season long thing, like a reason to start him rather than not, because ceiling is still an issue with him, right? Ceiling is, especially against the Bears. However, I will say this: the Bears are 4th against the pass DVOA, 20th against the run. Taylor busted his chalk last week when they blew out the Jets and just didn't need him. Now he's going to have marginal ownership this week at best. On top of that, the Lions, Giants, and Falcons collectively averaged 4.39 yards per carry against the Bears. Again, Lions don't have a definitive running back. I think Adrian Peterson is now their definitive running back. Giants, and we're talking about that. I think that's the game Saquon got hurt relatively early. And then the Falcons, who are using kind of Gurley and kind of using, none of these teams are really built to run outside of their actual whatever skill the player has. So for that sake, like I said, ceiling when I'm comparing him to Kamara, am I going to play him over Kamara? Am I going to play him over Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Probably not. But I don't want to rule him out of the pool completely. So he's maybe like a 5% or maybe even a 3% that I leave in the MME teams. That's all I'll say about him. I'm with you on Carson. I would love the spot for Carson. He would be my excuse to not play so much Russell Wilson. Just like last week, it didn't work out last week, but this week, they're going to blow up Miami. He's going to run. Miami is 25th in DVOA against the run. They've been more of a pass funnel defense. They've allowed 4.8 yards a carry, 7th most receiving yards to running backs. It's all great. I'm going to have some, but I can't go too heavy for the reason that you just said, Paulie. And he has a sprained knee. So we saw what we saw. We saw the dude twist up his knee. He's got a sprained knee. I know they say he's good. They're going to try. Okay. Well, the fucking Jets said Mekhi Becton was okay. And he played for like two series and took himself out of the game. So I will have Carson. But this is just too big of a running back slate to take too many scary chances of things you can see going wrong. But I will have Carson. James Robinson, Bengals, 8th in DVOA against the pass, 21st against the run right now. Chargers, Browns, Eagles all average 5.24 yards per carry. And Robinson's usage has been great, man. 16, 11 carries his last 3 games. The targets have been slowly increasing, 3, 1, 4, 5. Granted, DJ Chark was out last week, but it's not like they were utilizing him a ton anyway. The Bengals, we saw with Sanders, he busted his shot because he didn't get in the end zone. He still crushed him on the ground. That was more of just the game just got out of hand to what we wanted, but he still did his thing on the ground. I do like James Robinson, but he's more so in a game stack situation. He's more in a bring back for me. I'm playing thorough Joe Burrow with Tyler Boyd and Green or whoever. I'm bringing it back to Robinson. Even if I'm doing a 1v1 bring back, I'm playing Boyd in this lineup, so you know what? I think I will take a shot on Robinson in this lineup. But I will have exposure. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is also my favorite, but he is for now, because of how big my pool is, he's getting the same treatment to me. he's getting the game stack treatment. He'll be in pretty much all my cam teams, I would envision, or at least most of my cam teams, and I will have cam teams. I do like Edwards-Helaire. Patriots allowed 4.48 yards per carries against the first 3 opponents. They're 27th against the pass, 19th against the run. But again, this is more about the expected game script. I expect the Chiefs to be winning, and I expect them to be trying to give him the ball through the pass game and through the ground as much as possible. 25, 10, 20, those were his carry totals last 3 games. 3, 2, 8. I'm sorry, 2, 8, and 6, his last 3 targets. The targets in each of the last 3 games. Like it. Last but not least, like you said, Kenyon Drake. Carolina's giving up 5 yards per carry, a league high 32 receptions to running backs. Really sucks that Kyler Murray isn't throwing it to Drake, because this would be a phenomenal spot for that. But even though they're not, as you mentioned, Carolina is 28th against the run DVOA. And Drake is getting the carries. He's getting the opportunities. 16, 20, 18. Those are his carries for each of the last 3 games. Targets I haven't been there. That sucks. I'd like to see him get more involved in the pass game. We know he could do it. We've seen him do it last year. But either way, I can see, like I said, I can see him and D-Hop both kind of just taking them on cruise control through the game and just doing dirty. So Drake is probably my actual favorite of this range. With that said, Paulie, value tell me.
All right. So there's not a ton that I love down here, like Devin Singletary. I understand as long as Moss is out, which we don't know quite yet. And the Raiders are worst against the run so far, DVOA, but he just doesn't get enough volume, in my opinion, to like really want to commit to that with, guys only a couple hundred more that we do really like. Same kind of goes for Joe Mixon. Jacksonville's actually been decent against the run. I do think that they're just going to be bad overall, and this could be a breakout spot. But I think that the team's just changing their culture, and with Joe Burrow, not going to give him those 30 touches a game he's been getting the last 2 or 3 years, and they're going to really spread the ball around. And, the touchdown variance would have to go his way. When I thought I needed value more, I was a little more into him. Henderson against the Giants does appear to be a great spot. Akers is out. What's Brown's situation? Is he out as well?
John Brown? I'm
Malcolm
sorry.
Brown.
I don't know. Malcolm Brown, I don't know. I'll try to look that up.
Yeah.
You.
Not with Team
No.
Thursday.
I'm pretty sure he was playing, no?
You got 7 to 10. I don't know. Well, he had that big game week 1. This seems to be a good spot. The Giants are just bad right now. But there's a chance to, I'm not convinced the Rams are that good. You know what I mean? Like, they kept it pretty close with Philly. So, this kid Henderson's all right. He seems to be projecting to be a little bit more popular than, I would like. But, I'll have a couple because it's the Giants. They're terrible, but I'm more interested in their receivers. A lot of mouths to feed there. Hard to envision him actually ending up being a player you needed. But, again, as if you're spending up at other positions, you need some of those value guys. He's all right. Mike Davis is the guy that, especially for DraftKings, that I am interested in. The 8 targets, back-to-back weeks, should be trailing. I can get behind that. David Johnson, I'm mildly interested in. He's another one projecting to be a little too popular for my liking for a guy that we just have not seen do very well yet. I know Minnesota's the nut spot for running backs, but I just I don't know. I find it hard to envision Sunday being fuck, man, I wish I had more David Johnson. He just doesn't post those big games. It's been a long time since he has. And David Johnson's just a threat to vulture some of the goal line action. And they're really not giving him enough touches to warrant that kind of ownership. But he's all right. I'll have some of that. If Carson does get ruled out, I would really like Carlos Hyde. Um, Rex Burkman had a great game last week, but now James White is back. Maybe James White, maybe Sony Michel. All of them are cheap. It's annoying that all three are there. I think the way you attack Kansas City, though, is you try to keep it out of Mahomes' hands, and you do run it. I think that the Patriots kind of going to spread it out, so none of them really interest me all that much. Ronald Jones at 4-7 against the Chargers, with Fournette out, and Chris Godwin being out, that is kind of growing on me a little bit here. What are the Chargers? What have they done against the run? 11th. He's gotten that 3, 4, and 2 targets, which is more than in the past. I expect him to be playing from ahead, or at least in a closer game. He's decent at that price, and I think that's the extent of what I'm really looking for. Some people are interested in Myles Gaskin. I don't see myself really doing a ton of that. Yeah, that's it. I'm not really into this value. I do think my Mike Davis is kind of interesting, and I will have some David Johnson. But now that my Deshaun Watson exposure is probably decreasing, the need to leverage that or get exposure to what could burn me is just decreased a little bit. I'm more into the mid and upper tier again.
Yeah, I think Daryl Henderson. It's annoying the Malcolm Brown thing because the Rams drafted this kid, right? They got rid of Gurley. They drafted this kid, so this kid is the guy that they want to go with. But he's still a rookie. Rookies make mistakes from time to time. If Malcolm Brown were to perform better, there's no reason to think they wouldn't just roll Malcolm Brown. But it's expected that Henderson is going to be the guy, and this is a really good spot for him. The Rams are the most run-heavy team in the league. They lead the league in carries at 111. They also lead the league in rushing success rate at 60%, and also rushing rate inside the opponent's 10-yard line. Giants are 30th against the pass, 8th against the run, but I think that this game script is just... I think the Giants really are... It's not so much that I think the Rams are a great team, as much as I think the Giants are a bad team. And I think the Giants were a bad team going into it. Now you take away Saquon Barkley. And, at least with Saquon, there's always that threat. I would never doubt it. And you still got guys like Golden Tate. You still got guys like Darius Slay. There's only one Jalen Ramsey. So there's some potential, but them being big double digits favorites like this at home, it's just hard to envision one of these running backs not eating, just getting a ton of work. They're already trying to run the ball. Even in games that are competitive, they're still trying to run the ball. What are they going to do when they're actually up? Probably run the ball. So it's hard not to like them, but I agree that when we look for these plays and this can't fail, right? There is a path to this failing. Is this the same way Jonathan Taylor failed last week? They just worked in Hines. Game got out of hand. They worked in Hines some. So that has me a little bit worried, but I do like them.
It's you got Drake for 200 more. It's hard to click the Henderson.
I'm clicking Drake over him all day. The question is, when you're playing 3 running backs, do you not go that's what he is to me. He's an RB3 to me. He's like Kamara, Drake, and him as my 3 running backs. That's a scenario I can see. But to your point, we have a ton of running backs, man. So it's you're playing them over somebody. So for me, it's about the builds. If I need to save money at running back, but I could afford them, I'll get them. If I can't afford them, like you mentioned, we do have Ronald Jones who opened up. And speaking of, in that situation, it's hard to envision the Chargers are just a weird team. Now the Chargers are really banged up on the front lines, right? Like their interior, their front, their defense is banged up. They do have Casey Hayward, who you expect to shadow Evans, and not for nothing, but Evans has never been good at winning one-on-one matchups with good cornerbacks. We've seen Marshawn Lattimore shut him down several times. And so, where's it going to go? Maybe one of the tight ends, but there's a good chance that Tampa Bay kind of gets ahead because their defense is also really good, and they just run the ball constantly. And so, yeah, I think they have a rookie they could work in or whatever, but it's hard to envision them not getting a lot of carries. So, I'm with you on that as far as the value plays goes. With that said, playing Ronald Jones over some of the talented names we have, that's also kind of, it's reality check. You know what I'm saying? Tough pill to swallow. But I do like him. I will have exposure.
Real quick, any interest in a 4-9 Latavius Murray with all the injuries to the Saints skill
I just
players.
don't see why to do it. We got so many good running backs. Like on a showdown slate, sure. On a 2-game slate, sure. But on a slate this big with so many good running backs, I just, even if he smashes, I feel like his ownership's going to be so low that it wouldn't even, like, I don't think it's going to affect you. There's going to be so few people that play Lat Murray. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I understand the logic just because he's so cheap and like the running game has to work there. So if it's not Kamara, then it's got to be Murray, right? Like, and there's the touchdown vulture scenario where Kamara gets him down the
Yeah.
field, but then he takes his break, and that's the play Murray pounds it in. There's absolutely that scenario. It's just to take the chance on him, and it is a big chance when you have so many. I'd rather just play someone else. If I was worried, I'd rather just avoid it and play someone else completely.
And where are you on the Patriots backfield? Just fading
Yeah,
all of it, or is there
I'm
any?
just avoiding it. I think Cam is my running back. Like when I'm playing Cam, I'm looking at it like I got a fourth running back that could throw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mike Davis, Cardinals are ninth against the pass, 13th against the run DVOA. However, the pass game usage looks pretty real, right? He played the game, McCaffrey got hurt, still got 8 targets. And then he played a full game, got 9 targets. It seems like their system is designed to throw to a running back, and he's that guy. So I'm okay with it, but he's more of a bring back to me. If need be, I don't even think, like, there are some situations where I won't have a bring back. I might have a lineup with Kenyon Drake, because I do think there is a possibility that Arizona just spanks him. I mean, we're waiting for Carolina to get spanked. It's just not happening. They're coming off a win. They're feeling good about themselves. Arizona's defense, we'll find out how good they actually are. Are you a good defense where you're going to beat up on bad teams, or are you really just shit? We'll find out. And it's always like, it's hard to ignore the other side of a Panthers game because of how fast they play. You just know there's more opportunities for the Panthers. But so I'll have some exposure to Mike Davis. I had talked about David Johnson. I do like DJ, but he's more of my pivot. I'll play him in some lineups with Deshaun Watson, sure. But he's more of my leverage play off of Watson. If I'm not playing Watson, I still think they're going to score somehow. So it must have been him. If it wasn't Watson, it must have been this guy. That's kind of my approach. But I will have David Johnson. Minnesota 13th against the pass, 23rd against the run. Duke Johnson is back, so that could affect the snaps that David Johnson was getting. Duke Johnson hasn't played since week 1, and David Johnson was just dominating the snaps. But I do like David Johnson for the price. It's too low and a good matchup. David Montgomery, I'll mention for namesake. The Colts are first in DVOA against the pass. I'm sure the Jets had a lot to do with that. 12th against the run. But Tyreek Cohen is out for the season. So Montgomery might actually get some targets thrown his way. And he's got a more capable quarterback that can get him the ball. Last but not least, Myles Gaskins, because I already talked about Ronald Jones. Myles Gaskins, Seahawks 29th against the pass, 4th against the run. However, Seattle is missing Jamal Adams, and they're missing linebacker Jordan Brooks. So that could lead to more targets, more opportunity for Myles Gaskin. With that said, let's go over to wide receiver, Paulie.
All right. Price. All right. So, the price is getting up there on D Hop, but he's like, getting that Kamara like target work, and they're high probability of being caught because they're so short. He's like getting like 5 to 10 yard passes, and it's. I don't see it really changing much. You got Kirk is probably going to be back. We don't know yet, but he's going to be the deep guy that just kind of almost running the ball through Hopkins with the threat of Murray, taking off. And this kid's good, and he's probably got some touchdown variants coming his way where the monster ceilings can come when like the 15 targets, 10 catches for $150 and 2. And he goes for 45, and you had to have him, come. And the Panthers D is so bad. I could see him catching one and breaking the tackle and taking it to the house. We'll have quite a bit of him, and not having much Murray. I'd still want exposure to that offense, like you mentioned, through Hopkins. I'm not that high on the Seattle receivers or really their whole offense unless the running backs get ruled out. It's just like, A, I don't want to have to choose between Metcalf and Lockett. B, Miami actually does have some good cornerbacks. C, I think that they'll have success on the ground. So, I don't think I spend up there on those guys. Tyreek Hill, I will have some of. He's just he scored a touchdown all 3 games this year. He's seems to be like in peak performance level, and maybe Cam does keep this game close, and the Chiefs are pushed to continue to score, and Tyreek Hill is a weapon that can just explode. 2 seasons ago he had 4 40-point DraftKings games. Last year he dealt with a lot of injuries, didn't really do it, so people have like almost forgotten it. But he's got that in him. He could take 2 catches for 140 yards on top of the normal stuff. So he's kind of a guy, especially because I'm going to have so much Cam that on the bring back and stacking the game up, so I do have interest there. Regardless of John Brown's status, I do really like Stephon Diggs, the relationship that they have. The number 1 receiver in the Bills offense is just like guaranteed, the volume to really put up a big day with or without the touchdown. And Stephon Diggs is good. And the Raiders are not. Where am I going down to?
You went down to Dig. Well, we could stop it at Dig. No. Take it down to Thielen at 6'6". Matter of fact, take it down to Keenan Allen at 6'5". We'll cut it there. Take it down to Keenan Allen.
Okay. I like Hopkins a lot, right? I'm not gonna have the money to spend up too much more on a lot of high end receivers because I think the mid tier is loaded. So Amari Cooper at home with the number 1 and 2 and possibly 3 cornerbacks out, that's attractive. If this was last season, he might have been one of my highest owned players. Now that there's just so many mouths to feed in Dallas in the pass game and with Zeke, it's hard to really ever go too high on him because, like last week, some guy like Cedric Wilson can show up and get 2 touchdowns, so. But it's a really good spot with the injuries and the high total. Gotta like Allen Robinson. Think Chicago will either be trailing or this is a back and forth game. He finally has a good quarterback throwing his way. Hence, the 10 receptions for $123 and a touchdown after getting 9 and 9 targets, but only catching 5 and 3 of them. And, I think the Colts past D is a little inflated because of the Jets. Thielen, I always like. I think you can always pass on Houston. They have a fairly slow secondary. But I'm in love with Keenan Allen. I mean, no Mike Williams. Since this Herbert kid came in, 10 targets and then 19, catching 13 of them. Tampa Bay is just good all around defensively. I think this is a Keenan Allen kind of spot. Now, they could kind of shadow him and this fail, but I don't know. I just think that kid is locked into him. I had Mike Williams last week, and it was so painful. Just every pass play going to Keenan. That kind of volume you really can't ignore. You got to get some of that. He's probably my favorite in this range after Hopkins.
Yeah, I think with a lot of these spend ups, obviously we stack in tournaments, and I like to do the double stacks where I take 2 of the receivers, or sometimes a running back or tight end. So a lot of these guys are kind of just depending on who my quarterback is, and by that I mean Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. That's going to depend on if I'm going to Miami in that game, if I got Russ as my quarterback, that kind of situation. Tyreek Hill, I'm only going to use in a bring back situation on a Cam team. Stephon Diggs, same thing. Stephon Diggs, I was a lot higher on until Brown got ruled in. I still like Diggs, but mostly in pairings with Allen or as a bring back in a potential like Jacobs Waller type situation where I'm looking for one back on the other side. Hopkins is the one guy that I just genuinely like, and with all the value we have, it's very hard not to want to get a piece of him. I think that him and Drake are both in very good spots, just like last week. Last week it didn't work out that well. Hopkins got there okay. Drake obviously didn't. It's just the game just didn't go, I think, how people thought. But this one's really hard to ignore. Carolina's defense has been that bad. You mentioned even talking about Keenan Allen. Who did he do that against? Carolina. So it's hard to envision Hopkins not really feasting here, especially we talked about how Carolina likes to play the zone. We talked about how Hopkins is not really a big air yards guy this year. He's just a volume guy, and they're doing a lot of hitch plays, which are designed to beat zones. They go and they find the weakness in the zone, and he stands there, and Murray throws him the ball. That's how that works. So I love DeAndre Hopkins. He'll be chalky. And that's part of the reason that I like to pay down quarterbacks is I can comfortably get him without having to get too chalky anywhere else because I should have more money left over than everyone else who decided to pay up a quarterback. Adam Thielen, interestingly enough, while volume has not been a thing for him, right? 8 and 5 targets last 3 games. Vikings not really throwing a ton. On top of that, Houston, not a good defense. They're 24th against the run DVOA, 19th against the pass. But Adam Thielen is like 3rd in air yards in the league. So when they are throwing it to Thielen, it's down the field. And so because of that, you got to have always have consideration in him, especially when you like the game, and I know we do. Keenan Allen, I'm kind of stuck on a little bit, man. Like, the targets were incredible, and like the answer is just to get some. Of course, I'm going to have some. It's just a matter of how much. The matchup is atrocious, right? Like, Bowles is going to have a field day with this kid. He's going to have a field, and that's the reason I kind of like Eckler, is because I think he's going to have to check down a lot. I don't know if this kid's going to have the time. We know the Chargers' offensive line has not been good. They've been banged up. I think they lost their center for the rest of the season. I don't remember, but I know they're banged up. And Bowles is known for exotic blitzes. That's what makes his defense so good. It's just the way he blitzes the quarterback. So I'm a little concerned with the efficiency. I think that Allen will get the targets. He's going to throw it, like you said. He's kind of locked in. He's going to try. A little concerned with the efficiency, similar to how we saw, and this isn't a comparison of the receiver, just a comparison of the situation. Similar to how we saw Joe Burrow giving A.J. Green 18, 20 targets and just couldn't connect on those situations. I have a little bit of a fear that we could see something like that here, and that's what pushes me more towards Eckler. On the flip side, it's easier to take a receiver and kind of like fall in love with them than it is to take a running back and fall in love with them. We have so many good running backs. But I agree to have some. 19 targets in that last game was kind of an eye-opener. I think, okay, so I'll kick it back to you, Paulie. Take us down to like, I don't know, maybe we go down to like 5,500 or so.
All right. So, another deep range, but no one like strongly stands out, down to like about 6K. I think Kenny Golladay is the first guy that I've got significant interest in, like in a game where they said he wasn't 100% and that he'd be limited. He still got like 7 or 8 targets, got in the end zone. There were no Marshawn Lattimore, high total on the turf, another week to recover. The number one target for Matt Stafford. We like Stafford. Who are we going to like to pair is an underpriced Kenny Golladay. And then Will Fuller, right? Like, we're looking at another high total. We like Watson. Who do we want to pair him? A guy that is actually healthy for once and, had 10 targets week 1. We know he's a big play waiting to happen. Minnesota secondary is terrible. So I like that quite a bit. Odell, Dallas is terrible against the pass. The Seattle Seahawks just absolutely destroyed them through the air. You had the Metcalf meltdown. You had other offensive pass interference calls that came back, but they were doing whatever they wanted. And I expect the Browns to be trailing. So Odell, once again, is interesting. He's got history of doing well in Dallas. I could see this being the spot where he finally does it. And Julian Edelman, he kind of took last week off. They let it go through Burkhead. But, I think Cam goes right to his buddy. The price is a little cheaper, and they should be trailing. DJ Moore is projecting to be really popular. I don't mind it, but, with all the other good plays around him, he doesn't separate all that much for me from the rest of these guys. And with the ownership projecting, like on some sites over 20%, to me, that's just like a get under the field. And then I do really, really like AJ Green this week. I think he has the vintage 2 touchdown, 10 target, 100+ yard, just do whatever he wants against Jacksonville. And, the pairing with Burrow. With guys going to Tyler Boyd, who I think, is fine too, but, I think he was the beneficiary of like people focusing on AJ Green and, him having better matchups. This week, I think is the AJ Green spot, and love the price at 5.5.
Yeah, there's a lot to like in this tier as well. Really, that six, like including from Thielen down, there was a lot to like at this point. Kenny
Yeah.
Galladay is my favorite, also, man. I mean, what's not to like? No Marshawn Lattimore. We know that Stafford likes to throw to him. They're at home. It's just a really good spot overall. Love he's my favorite in this one of my favorite receivers on the slate. I do like Tyler Boyd a lot. Don't get me wrong. I like AJ Green, but I have Tyler Boyd ahead, not because of recency bias, simply because Jacksonville has had the dirty done to them by slot receivers in all three games. Paris Campbell had that breakout game week 1. Adam Humphries had a real good game week 2, and then Isaiah Ford, Miami, popped his little head out and did a little something. So Jacksonville 32nd against the pass DVOA, 9th against the run DVOA. Boyd has had 5 targets, 8 targets, and 13 over the last 3 games, so it does seem like there's a little bit developing there. And everybody kind of thought that going into the season that Boyd would be the guy because of the slot and everything else. With that said, I do like AJ Green a lot, and I think AJ Green's going to come in at much lower ownership. I've been playing AJ Green every week, following the air yards, following the targets, and I'm going to continue to do it because I'm not going to miss out when he finally does. I'm too invested at this point. And this is the softest matchup he will have had all season. So I'll knock those two out. I really like triple stacks with Joe Burrow as well. While we're on the topic with Boyd and Green together, you talked about Will Fuller. Pretty obvious spot, I think. Right? We like that game. Minnesota's been bad. Fuller's number 1 guy. I'm not going to spend too much time discussing that. It's fine. I like it. You mentioned Odell. As well, not anything too different. He's leading the team in targets. Dallas' secondary is weak. Simple as that. I'm all for it. Devontae Parker, I like. I do like some Fitzmagic. I like Seattle's defense has been terrible. They're banged up. Their secondary is really banged up right now. No reason Devontae Parker shouldn't have a decent game. Last but not least in this tier, Julian Edelman, as you said, Paulie. Well, actually, let me just make sure I'm. Yeah. 5,500 we said. So yeah, Julian Edelman. I'm gonna play him. Every camp team will have Edelman at least. Probably have some Harry too, because I like the triple stacks either way. But Cam is the one exception to the rule for me because he counts as a skill player also, like they can run and all that shit. So I'm okay doing a stack of one player with him. But yeah, I'll have plenty of Edelman. What about Value Town, Paulie?
There's a lot to like down here. You know, if it's not Adam Thielen on Minnesota, this Justin Jefferson kid really impressed last week with the 9 targets, let alone the yardage and the touchdown. Was one of the top touted receivers coming out of college, and probably the reason that they let Stephon Diggs go, and was really impressed, and think that they're just going to continue to go that way. Jarvis Landry, instead of Odell for a little bit cheaper. He's hasn't had the volume so far, but if they do fall behind and are forced to throw it a ton, I could see him kind of breaking out. With all the injuries to New Orleans, I think we got to take a serious look at Traquan Smith. Man, there's so much. Really like Hunter Renfrow with the Raiders injuries, the fact that they could be trailing, and he's a slot receiver that has, really done well against the Bills. He's probably my favorite value receiver right now. What else do we got down here? You got what's his name? Cook from Houston as well. That seems to be growing his relationship with Watson. We've got N'Keal Harry at 4K. You just mentioned it. Damier Byrd, the min. Went from no targets to 9, back down to 3. Kansas City can rush the passer, so maybe he does have another ceiling game in terms of targets, because of the checkdowns. Who else do we got? Preston Williams at 4-5. We think Miami's going to be able to score against Seattle. That's a nice price tag. Yeah, Golden Tate I don't mind either. We expect Slayton to have a hard time. So, who the Giants going to throw to? It's either Tate or Ingram at this point. Scotty Miller for Tampa Bay. He's had a couple decent plays, with Tom Brady. The volume hasn't been great, but as long as Godwin's out, and you're going to have a good corner on Evans. Like, this could be the breakout spot for him. Oh, there's a lot down here. Keelan Cole, seems to kind of, although Shark is back, but I think he's still going to get that same kind of volume, and I kind of like the slot receivers against Cincinnati. Who else? With John Brown out, well, he's not out anymore, so scratch that. I guess I'll cut it there, but I outside of Hopkins, like, I think the mid-tier and value is where it's at receiver. Is there anyone that I didn't mention that you are, like, really high on?
No, nobody and that's kind of the problem with the slate. And obviously, you and I have our articles out at the site tomorrow or Sunday morning, and that's really where we'll narrow things down. I have a core plays article that I write where I'll give my core, I'll give my GPP leverage plays, I'll give my favorite tournament pivots. You write the GPP breakdown for us. So we'll obviously have to reduce all this, but that's not going to be easy, man. Like, we have tonight and tomorrow to kind of really do that, sift through and kind of narrow the shit down, because my pool is big right now, and at receiver and at every tier. I like CD Lamb in a bounce back spot after being somewhat popular last week. Gallup was the guy. Slots have done the dirty to Cleveland. And I know Cleveland, maybe they don't need it because they're missing two of their best DBs. But that doesn't mean that the spot for CD Lamb is not even better also. You mentioned Jefferson already. Marvin Jones, right? I like triple stacks. I like the idea of using Marvin Jones with Galladay going up against the Saints. Anthony Miller, not as high of a play, but it is a spot where slots have done damage to the Colts. They've had an issue with the slot receivers. Braxton Berrios was able to have a decent game against them. There's a ton of them, right? Sammy Watkins is cheap. Brandon Cooks is an option in that game. It's not going to be just Fuller if Watson goes out there and smashes. This is going to be somebody else that does it with him. It's either DJ or it's probably going to be Brandon Cooks. But I think that the cheapest one that I'll have by default because of the stacks is probably N'Keal Harry. I know people are kind of down on him on last week, and it's definitely risky. The snap counts were down. He seemed like he was kind of in the doghouse last week, but that very well could have been, like you said, Paulie, because they didn't need him. They were just running. Yep. They only needed Edelman on the field as a decoy, and they were going to run the ball double tight ends. That was just, that was their game plan. So I think against the Chiefs, they're going to need receivers. So he's really cheap. I think it's a buy low opportunity. He was getting the usage I'm not worried about. We like Cam, and that's a very cheap stack. Like, I know that in our projections, the Patriot receivers, like Edelman was projecting point per dollar wise pretty high, and N'Keal Harry was. You throw in Cam, who also projected well for us, and all three of those guys, for their prices, are expected to give you positive returns. So I'll leave it at that. I'm with you. I'm not going to, at some point.
Where you at on Hunter Renfrow?
I'm not as big on it. I know it's a good spot by all means, but I think I'd rather take some shots on Waller, and I'm more interested in Jacobs in that game specifically. Slots have done the dirty to Buffalo as well. That's been their big weakness in their defense, so I'm totally fine with it. But in terms of ceiling, it's hard for me to envision his ceiling in comparison with a lot of the other guys that we have. Don't hate it, just don't have room for it more than anything else. I'll let you, boy. With that said, we'll go over to tight ends. Obviously, there's a lot of receivers in play, and that's the thing about receiver. A lot of times, it's going to go with depending on who your stack is, who your running backs are, and you're kind of work backwards. But a lot of guys in the pool, definitely. Going to tight ends, we'll make the cutoff here at Jaceki at 5-1. Paulie, are you paying up for any tight ends?
Doubtful. I just think that the spend ups at the other positions have significantly higher probability of hitting their ceilings. Like, sure, Kelsey can always go off, but they just got so many mouths to feed, and nothing really screams that this would be the Kelsey week for me. I actually preferred him against the Ravens. Mark Andrews, I guess if I did spend up, it would be on him. Bounce back spot, seems to be the most reliable, the most likely to get it in the red zone. And, I just expect them to do a lot of scoring against Washington. Higbee's fine, but with Everett kind of looming, it's, if he didn't have those 3 touchdowns, like, he wouldn't be as expensive. He wouldn't be, as talked about, his targets have been pretty low. Waller and Gesicki are the 2 I've got the most interest in. A, because their prices are reasonable, and B, Waller with the wild volume the 2 weeks before, and, although Buffalo's decent against tight end, I don't think they take him out of the game as much as New England was able to. And I think that he, goes back to that 10-plus kind of target situation. And then Gesicki, with Jamal Adams out, the fact that he's pretty much a slot receiver in a huge high-total game, that they should be trailing, it just, lines up pretty well against Seattle's defense, which I don't have much respect for. So those 2 are the ones that I'd have the most interest in at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not terribly interested in the spend ups. I'm not really interested in Kelsey too much. Patriots have been really good against tight ends, and I would imagine they're going to do what they can to focus on him and Tyreek. I think people in the chat earlier were asking, who do we think they're going to... I don't think they're really worried about Hilaire. I think they're more worried about Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey. Mark Andrews, I'm with you for triple stacks. We talked about Lamar Jackson. It's pretty easy, right? It's going to pretty much 2 dudes. Mark Andrews, sure, maybe Boykin too, but Andrews is one of those guys for sure. Darren Waller, I could try it just because the Bills have been a little vulnerable over the middle of the field. It's been more so slot receivers, but obviously with all the missing receivers we have, it's hard to envision Waller not getting a ton of targets, like them not trying at least to feed him the rock. So I'm good with Waller. Gesicki, I think his matchup just got upgraded. And so he's on the table to me, right? No Jamal Adams, so you want to give me triple stacks with Fitz, him, and Devontae Parker, I can do that. Even Fitz, him, and Preston Williams, I could do that. So, yeah, I think he's another one I'm interested in, but really only in game stack situations. I'm not playing him by himself. If I'm playing a tight end by himself, I'm punting, and there's really one guy I'm punting with. Paulie, with that said, take us to the value tight ends.
Yep. Really like Logan Thomas. I think that's the guy you're talking about. If you're punting, that's the guy. Sims is out. It looks like McLaurin's going to be out. Who in the world else are they going to throw to? It's going to be this kid. The Ravens are going to get pressure. He's going to check down. He's already getting a ton of targets, big market share of that pass game. And now you take potentially and likely McLaurin out. At his price, divided by the amount of catches and yards alone, even without a touchdown, he should be very good. And then he does find the end zone. Hard to see it busting. I like Evan Ingram. The price is really low, 4-4. The likelihood that Slayton's kind of taken out, makes the target tree that much smaller. It's like, hate this guy. So I think that this is the week where he finally breaks out. He's had, decent enough volume, and I don't think the Rams are gonna shut out the Giants. I think their offense has enough talent to kind of move the ball. We saw Philly move the ball against the Rams. We saw Dallas, although they didn't score a ton of points, but I think the Giants moved the ball, and I think Ingram at that price of 4-4, the high likelihood of them targeting him in the red zone is, shapes up well for this weekend. Don't mind TJ Hawkinson. And then the last guy I'll mention is Adam Troutman of the Saints with Jared Cook getting ruled out. This guy was a 3rd-round draft pick. Athletic freak, has already caught 1 and 2 targets in the past 2 games when Cook was there. Probably going to have a really, really big role. I think Hill, the other tight end, is injured as well. And they just, outside of Kamara, there's just no one that's that talented. This might be the next most talented receiver that they got. And I expect them to use him in the red zone. Highest total. Detroit's defense is terrible. And he's 2.5K. It's just like, what does he got to do? 3 catches for 40 yards and you're at 3X. And if they're going to score all these points, like there's a chance that, one of them comes through him. Like I said, he's a, third round talented pass catching tight end out of college. Like stepping into potential like 80% of the passing snap role. I do have a lot of interest in a 2.5K tight end. I also mentioned Jimmy Graham, 10 targets last week with the addition of Nick Foles. And, the Colts are decent against the pass. Maybe they rely some more on Jimmy G here at 3.8. I don't love it. I think I'd much rather Ingram and Logan Thomas or the punt all the way down to Troutman. But this is a pretty weak position in my opinion. And, like, my pool may end up being, like, 4 or 5 guys. Like, Waller, Thomas, Ingram, Troutman, Hockenson. Like I may end up with just a couple guys or Jaceki before that.
Yeah, I think I'll start with Hockenson also. Yeah, I'm good with him, but in stacks. I'm not playing Hockenson by himself. If Lattimore and everybody was in, I did actually like Hockenson a little bit more because I felt like it was going to funnel towards him. But with their other guys out, I think that if Stafford can throw to Galladay and Jones, he will. So I expect to see that. After that, I think Hunter Henry also on the table. We're asking about the Chargers, Keenan Allen, Eckler. There's a scenario where, it's him. It's Hunter Henry who ends up doing that dirty. Jared Cook, 80 yards, 5 receptions against Tampa Bay. Noah Fant. I'm sorry. I said Jared Cook. I meant Noah Fant. I was looking at the wrong fucking game. Noah Fant, 5 receptions, 46 yards. So nothing great, nothing crazy. But Hunter Henry, we think, is an above-average tight end. We know where there's a young quarterback. They have a tendency to lean on certain players. If it's not happening with Eckler, I do think it's going to be Eckler, but if it's not happening with him or Allen, could be Hunter Henry. You mentioned Logan Thomas. He's my favorite. I mean, all the injuries Washington's had. On top of that, looking at the Ravens and what they've done. Week 1, David Njoku, 3 receptions, 50 yards, and a touchdown. Austin Hooper, 2 catches for 15 yards, 7.5 yards a carry. So if you collectively, not bad. The Houston Texans, Jordan Akins, 7 receptions for 55 yards. And then, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs, as we saw recently, Kelsey, 6 receptions, 87 yards. So they've had a vulnerability to tight ends. The issue, of course, has not been targets or Logan Thomas. He's getting plenty of targets. The issue has been efficiency. And that's still very well maybe an issue. But you know what? Maybe he's in that role. He might get 16 targets because there's no one else to throw to. No Steve Sims, may lose McLaurin. And they're playing a Baltimore team that we can almost, guarantee that they're going to be playing from behind. So love Logan Thomas this week. He's my favorite tight end overall. But again, I will be working in some of these other guys for game stack purposes and to get different kind of builds because I expect Logan Thomas to be pretty damn popular and for good reason. And then the last value guy that I'll mention are the ones you already did from New Orleans. Adam Troutman, 2,500 on DraftKings. Sounds like he's kind of overtaken that backup role. No Jared Cook. And they could really use the help over there with no Michael Thomas already. So I do like that. I wanted to ask you, Paulie, it's funny. We talk about the Chargers, and it sounds like that game has a low total, and it sounds like there's a couple players we like. You're big on Keenan Allen. I like Eckler. But what about the Patriots side? We talked about Ronald Jones as potential, but we know he's not a huge ceiling guy typically. We talked about not really being into Evans a whole ton. What about Gronk and Howard? I mean, Gronk has been winning the snap count battle. There's been, Gronk made a joke about he came here to block or something like that, but obviously he wants the ball. Any interest in these tight ends?
Yeah, I was actually thinking that, as you were talking, like especially with the tough matchup for Evans, it's like, who's Brady going to throw to, the guy he's familiar with. So I don't mind that, sneaky and, doesn't have to do much to just kind of pay off. I'm fine with it. He very likely to get that one touchdown, like 2 catches, 25 yards and a touchdown. You'd be happy with.
Yeah, I agree. It's nothing to necessarily write home about, but at the same time, it's decent. Matter of fact, Kelsey did have a pretty damn big game. Now, granted, that game went to overtime. 9 receptions, 90 yards, and a touchdown when they played earlier. So, potentially. So, I'll have him in the pool, but as far as like one-off tight ends, not correlating with anything, Logan Thomas will probably be my highest owned. Once again, as he is every week. and I will be disappointed come Monday once again, as I am every week. What about defenses? I didn't look a ton into the defenses. We could talk about them a little bit, though. You have your eye on any of the defenses coming into this week?
Yeah, there's a bunch that appear to be in good spots. I really like to target the bad O lines, the rookie quarterbacks, or the trailing situations. The teams that the big heavy favorites. The Rams are certainly in play. Danny Dimes just making a ton of mistakes. And, we keep talking about how there's a ton of value around. So, maybe spending up at defense is all right. The Ravens, certainly, I just think that they're going to get to the quarterback a ton. Another one that's, kind of pricey, but probably going to be worth it. No. Don't mind Arizona, they've been pretty impressive. Don't mind Tampa, against a rookie quarterback. But nothing really stands out. I think what I'll do is cap all of them at 10 to 15% and just, put all the teams that I think I, can live with into the opto and just live with whatever it ends up giving me and just have 6 to 10 teams of 10% or less and just, hope that there isn't that one team like the Colts last week that breaks the slate that I don't have any of.
Yeah, defenses, let's be real. You're never going more than a certain percentage anyway. It's just too much variance involved. Ravens and Rams are my favorite spend ups, no doubt. Ravens obviously at 4K against Washington, who's banged up. Sure, sounds great, no problem. Rams, I'm with you. It even correlates if you want to do the running back correlation, pair running back. That works too. Looking to save a little money, Tampa Bay, 3,400 against the Chargers. Like you said, I do like that. Tampa Bay at home, really good defense. Rookie quarterback, Todd Bowles should be just foaming at the mouth to get a hold of this rookie quarterback. And then one other defense I'll throw out there, and this is more for obviously for tournaments only, but for the YOLOers who, if you really need money this week, which you may not because there is value everywhere, but the Cleveland Browns. And listen, the Cowboys are very good, but the Browns defense is no slouch. They're decent. They can put pressure on the quarterback. It sucks that they're missing their DBs. You don't like that, but again, this is a very variant position. They could give up 30 points but score 2 defensive touchdowns. So it's just, for a punt. But yeah, I'll probably be sticking with the what would we just say, the fucking Bucks and higher, most likely. But like you said, I will never have more than 15-20% of any one defense anyway. There's just too much variance, too damn much.
Yep.
Normally, I think this is the part where Joe has you pick a game, like your favorite game stack going into it. We'll do it, but it's tough for me to narrow things down. So I'm going to have you go first, and then I'll just pick one. And I guess we'll have again, full disclosure, those of you listening to this on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, we do the show free, more of an analysis kind of thing. We go over what we like after we've done a lot of our research. Today was a little weird because we had a lot of news come out today. But for our final takes, if you're interested, wisestake.com. We have week passes available if you want to try it out. We got monthly stuff. We have all different kinds of packages. Articles, cheat sheets, our projections are already up, all that shit. Go check us out at wisestake.com. Join the nation. Book your ticket. Screenshot City. Let's make it happen. Paulie, what would be your game as of now?
So I'll say the I want to say the Bengals, Jacksonville, but I just don't know if I like anybody from Jacksonville. Like the Bengals as a stack, But I guess game stack wise, it's either going to be the Raiders, Buffalo, where I like the idea of Allen plus a receiver and running it back with Jacobs and or Waller or Renfro, and the Chiefs Patriots game. Really like Cam plus a receiver, running it back with whichever skill player you damn choose. A lot of Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Tyreek Hill for me on the Chiefs.
I like it. I'll go with the Saints Lions. 54 total. We know the Saints are really banged up defensively. I think that's a plus for Galladay, Stafford, Jones, all these guys. I'll go, and of course Kamara, Chalk City, but in a phenomenal spot on the other side. And I'll pick a second game too because Joey's not here to police this shit. And I will go. Well, I'll go with the Seahawks and Dolphins. I'll go with Seahawks Dolphins. Fitzmagic, Lockett, all these guys, man. Jaceki in an upgraded matchup. Devontae Parker. I like the idea of doing dirties that way. Long style. You know what we do. I see some questions in the chat. I know I've been kind of, when we do football shows, man, I got so many stats I'm looking at that it's hard for me to keep track of the chat also. If you guys have questions, you can go ahead and get them in there now. We're going to try to get out of here soon because we're already running kind of late. And I see a couple in here. We'll start with Wiggs. If you have any questions, get them in. We'll do our best to answer them. I see Miles with a question. John Brown or T.Y. Hilton? I'd say John Brown.
Why am I drawing a blank on
Hilton?
the Colts?
They're playing the Bears.
I don't like either.
I'm not crazy about it, but if you ask me to pick one, I'll say Brown.
Yeah, I guess I'll say Brown too, but neither.
Boy, Chadwick, is this the Joe Burrow show? I think it could be.
Could be.
It could be. Wes Bearden, anybody like James Robinson this week? I'm kind of liking it. I like him specifically in Bengal stacks, like game stacks. Like I have Burrow, Bengal players. Yeah, I'll bring it back with some James Robinson. Paulie, what are your thoughts?
As I was trying to think of like the game, and I love that Cincinnati side. I'm like, who from Jacksonville? I guess, Robinson would be the most likely guy to kind of run it back with probably the highest amount of touches and, performing well so far this year. But I'm not that into him unless it's in a stack.
Yeah, that's the same thing I'm doing pretty much. Well, I'll play him by himself and at lower exposure, but most of the teams I have him on are probably being Bengal teams. Let's see. Wig 3. What's up, Wig? Which KC player do you think Belichick takes away from the Chiefs? Kelsey or CEH? Kelsey.
I don't think that's like always like every week he's going to take one player out. And against the Chiefs, it's really hard to like decide who. I don't think he's really got the talent anymore, to really even do that sometimes. Yes, he did it to Waller. So, double teaming Kelsey with that same kind of game plan, I think would be the most likely. But Tyreek Hill did torch them 2 years ago for 3 touchdowns in a massive day. 2 years ago, Kareem Hunt as a rookie, tore them apart. So maybe he's got memories of those kind of situations. But if I had to guess, I think it's Kelsey. But really, I don't think he actually decides on one guy because they just really spread it out so much. You'd really kind of hurt yourself that way. I think you got to kind of play more balance against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say Kelsey, not because I think Belichick is going to try his best or to eliminate him, but because they've been good against tight ends. So naturally, I think it's going to be Kelsey. I think the personnel fits it better than Kelsey. King paid. Mike Davis on FanDuel has to be a fade, though, especially if he has ownership, right? On FanDuel? Yeah, I don't see why not. You're banking on him getting in the end zone over there. Target's ain't going to do shit over there. So I think that's a good point. Isaac, hey, I have a question. Would it be dumb for me to trade away Todd Gurley and Godwin for Amari Cooper?
I mean, definitely not dumb. It really comes down to like what the needs of your team are and how that trade benefits you, but that trade is fine.
I mean, part of me thinks Godwin and Cooper is fair enough. I mean, you might want to at least ask for a running back in return. I mean, maybe you don't need it, like Paulie said. Maybe that trade fits your needs. But Gurley, in this era where running backs are such a steep margin, you got some guys at the top. Gurley is a decent, in my opinion, a decent middling play, right? Where you're going to get some productive weeks out of him. So if you don't need it, if you have better running backs, by all means, and you just feel like, hey, Cooper is the last, piece to my team I need to be set, go for it. But I'd probably be a little more stingy, and say like,
yeah. Seems like you get A little
Right?
too
It's
much.
a little bit. I mean, throw in a mid-tier running back at me. That's all. That's all I'm asking. I'm giving you Gurley. You don't have to be as good as Gurley, but give me something. Because I think Godwin and Cooper is actually pretty close, man. I really think that when Godwin's healthy, I think he's going to be the true number one over there. I think Brady's going to feel comfortable throwing to him. He plays more in the slot. Evans more on the outside. So I do anticipate Godwin eventually leading this team in targets. Moochie Mob Ties. Who's your favorite D this week? Mine's probably the Bucks based off everything. Price, like everything considering. Price not a thing? Probably the Ravens. What do you think, Paulie? Ravens, right?
Yeah, Ravens.
Moochie Mob Ties. I'm sorry. Tony A. Who's your NFL lock bet of the week? Is there a bet you got your eyes on, Paulie?
Yes. It was. I really like the Giants getting almost 2 touchdowns. I think that's ridiculous. And there was one other one I liked a lot. I like the Bears if you buy it up to 3 as well.
Home dog. I could dig that. I'll go with the Lions.
Yeah, Giants, Bears.
I'll go with the Lions with the hook. Like, I gotta have the hook. I don't want it at 3. I want it at 3.5. And it's currently at 3.5. But I could see that game coming down to the Saints winning by a field goal at the end. I could just see it. Will Lutz.
I think the but you know what else I really, really like? I think you'll agree with me. Is the under in the Cowboys game.
Yeah,
under
I think that makes sense. I do. And like that could blow up in our face and people can laugh at us, make me. But right now, I mean, look, I don't know. It makes a lot of sense, I think. And you know the Browns are going to try to run. They always do. And again, like going back to what we said about Chubb, I know neither of us right now are too big on Chubb, but if Hunt's out, that's going to definitely bump Chubb way up our list, right? Especially with all the injuries Dallas has sustained to the middle of their defense. I think the only reason that we're not on Chubb more now is because of the threat of Kareem Hunt. So, but yeah, I do agree with you. I would be surprised. I do like that. I do like the under there. Whatever, could be a mistake. 55% of the bets are on the under, so maybe we're just being fucking fish or squares, whatever you call it. Moochie Mob Ties, CeeDee Lamb or Sammy Watkins? I go CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, me too.
Moochie also Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jabari Parker, best cash tag. Oh, Devontae Parker. He said Jabari. No, don't stick in Jabari, bro. I don't got to deal with Jabari right now. You know, I'm dealing with that motherfucker during basketball is enough. I don't even be dealing with him on my Sundays too. Just kidding. I like best cash stack. I don't know about I wouldn't do it in cash. I'd probably go grab right? Like I would do it in tournaments, yes, Moochie, but in cash, I would. The way the league has been this year, I'd find a way to get up to one of them expensive quarterbacks in cash. Just the way it's been. Like you've been dead with freaking paying down in cash games.
Yeah, and if it's like a stack that you require for cash, it's probably Russ plus one of his receivers or Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins for cash.
Yeah, I agree. But Moochie, make sure if you can, if you are a member, I think you are. If you are a member, check out Patio Joe's cash game article. He's been really good. He's like 3-0 in cash games these weeks.
Back-to-back winning seasons. If you just hail him the whole way, and 3-0 to start this year.
That's it.
I hate Patio Joe props. I really do. Especially since he made fun of some of my stuff on his last show.
He did. I was shocked when he came out like this week. It was for no reason. It was like kicking a guy when he was down. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Follow Patio Joe and cash games. Yeah. It's pretty damn safe.
He's doing a good job. Last question, and we'll get out of here from King Paid. Adam Troutman over Logan Thomas and GPPs?
Not over, but like that's the GPP pivot. You get an extra like $1,300 to use on the rest of your lineup. You're probably talking like 20-something% ownership to like 5% ownership, and that's a pivot.
Agreed. That is going to do it, Nation. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Don't forget, this is your last chance to get in on that giveaway. We're doing the drawing tomorrow afternoon. Give away a free $50. Giveaways on Twitter. You got to go on Twitter. You got to find the tweet. It's pinned at the Wise Take Twitter at @Wise_Take. You have to like the tweet, retweet the tweet, follow the Wise Take Twitter at @Wise_Take, and your name automatically gets put in. We'll do the little drawing and all that stuff with the wheel. We did it last time. You can find it on the channel if you want to see what it looks like. But this is your last chance to get in there. Once we get up there, $50 for free. We're going to send you $50. All you got to do is participate. We will run contests on YouTube as well. I have YouTube contests and all that. But right now, we're just doing Twitter. So if you don't have Twitter, either get a Twitter real quick for that purpose or just wait until we do a contest on a platform that you actually use. Paulie, anything in closing before we get up out of here?
College boy, get a Twitter. Jump in the contest.
Boom. For Paulie D, for myself, the entire Wise Tech Nation, as always, good luck.
Yeah.